Good morning, everybody. Happy Monday. We have an amazing show for everybody today. What do we have, Krystal?
Indeed, we do. A lot of interesting stories to talk about this morning. So a lot of notable old man moments from Joe Biden at the G7 and various other places. Maybe even more remarkable than that is the MSNBC Cope and Spin. So we will show you all of that.
Yes.
We also have some really fascinating new polls about how the coalitions are shifting between Trump and Biden. So older voters, for the first time in modern history, may actually vote for the Democratic candidate, Joe Biden. Meanwhile, Trump is cleaning up among infrequent voters. That is also a huge historical shift. So a lot that's really fascinating to dig into there in terms of those numbers. We also have some new interesting numbers out of France. So you'll recall the sort of centrist leader of France, Emmanuel Macron, called for snap elections. He appears to have sealed his political doom by making that decision. So we'll break down those numbers for you, what it could mean in the context of U.S. politics as well. Israel is threatening a huge escalation in their war against Lebanon and Hezbollah specifically. U.S. not doing a lot to forestall that possibility. So very dire consequences potentially there. We also have the U.S. military kind of freaking out about how significant the Houthi threat has been. And we're going to take a look at what we know about how much it has cost us to effectively go to war with the Houthis. We also are excited to be joined by Briahna Joy Gray. As you guys know, she was recently fired from the Hill for her commentary vis-a-vis Israel and Palestine. So we want to hear directly from her about that and about censorship in general. So lots to get to today.
Yes, we're excited for that. Before we get to that, don't forget, we've got our premium subscription. You can go ahead and sign up at breakingpoints.com. There's some awesome interviews, exclusive content, etc., that people get early access to, specifically from Counterpoint. So there's a great guest that is coming later. So you're going to want to go ahead and sign up, breakingpoints.com, to become a premium subscriber. So as Krystal alluded to, there's been some crazy Biden old man moments. You may have seen them, but what you probably didn't see is some of the most insane cope that we have gotten yet, both from MSNBC's Joe Scarborough and others on the network. Let's first start off with Biden at the G7, where historic gathering of some of the most unpopular leaders in the entire world coming together. There's certainly something to be said about that, which we'll get to in a little bit, where Biden certainly, I guess, made some headlines with some of his behavior. Let's go ahead and just take a look at this. So this is the most famous moment at the G7. For some reason, they decided that people should parachute in for no good reason in front of all the G7 leaders, and they're all nodding and clapping approvingly. Well, what everyone's focusing on here is this very strange Biden wandering off moment where you could see him just basically walking away from all the other leaders. He goes and tries to engage with some people who are jumping on the other side, and then has to be called back there by Meloni from Italy. Of course, he has to be the only person to cover up his face with the aviators to avoid the old man squint. And a lot of people for focusing in on this, just because it is the most classic hallmark of old man kind of lost, seemingly listless. Now, Krystal, the White House is accusing everyone who is showing in this video of selectively not telling the whole story. And the whole story, according to them, is that he was simply just wandering off in order to give a thumbs up there to the other parachutist. But they can't erase the weird optics of the situation. So anything you want to say before we get to some of the other ones?
Well, I'd just say as a prelude to the other ones that perhaps if this was an isolated incident,
yes,
we may be more inclined to buy their spin. Okay, anybody who's on camera a lot, you might have a few weird, awkward moments because all human beings at some level are fundamentally awkward. But given the track record here, I think the initial impression of yet another wandering old man moment is probably the accurate one.
That's right. So then in the span of 72 hours, Biden also finds himself in Los Angeles, right? At a fundraiser with George Clooney and Julia Roberts and Barack Obama. Well, let's go ahead and play some of this. First, here at a fundraiser in Los Angeles, there's a ritzy gathering, George Clooney, Julia Roberts, Biden basically being led away from the stage by Obama. Now, you could say again, whatever you want. The optics there, not good. Here, very odd meeting with the Pope, Biden himself, Catholic, basically touching heads with the Pope. And then here, let's take a listen to him with a TikTok guy.
And I know you're a typical press guy. You're grabbing me in front of all this. And I trust you as far as I throw your phone. I have a good arm, man. Absolutely. I can throw it a long way. But my point is this. Yes. I have made very clear to the Israelis what they have to do in the near term. If they don't, what's going to happen?
What's going to happen? Is the U.S. going to cut off funding?
I came because usually you tell me I have a nice suit and you didn't comment on my suit today, so I don't feel
You guys say something?
No.
Thank you. Can you step back in, sir, please? Thank you.
So being led away by Obama, I mean, the optics on that are just horrible because it's already the former president, the most popular Democrat in the entire country, leading away the aging president. Weird interaction with the Pope. That one, you know, that might not even be age. That's just vintage Biden. Then you've got him having an old man moment with this TikToker where the backstory is that this guy was invited to a VIP reception at the White House. And then look how angry Biden gets at him, threatening to throw his phone when he just asked a question about Gaza. He immediately calls him some typical press guy. I could throw your phone as far as I can. So you've got the orneriness, you've got the wandering away, you've got all of this literally happening in the span of like 72 to 96 hours. There's no spinning this away. It is what it is.
Yeah, and with the TikTok guy, I mean, there's a lot to say about that one because first you have, these are TikTok influencers you invited to the White House because
literally.
There's an assumption that they're like, you know, going to be on your side, et cetera.
Yeah.
You're antagonizing them. You don't seem to really understand who they are or why they're there. They're not some typical press guy. And then when he's asked a question about Israel, are you going to keep funding Israel? I mean, there's such a long pause, too, before he can marshal any sort of a response. Then ultimately aides have to swoop in and rescue him. I mean, this is just on like the simplest possible and most obvious question from this influencer who obviously is there because they think he's more or less friendly. So underscores the issues that Biden obviously has with young people over the Gaza war. We're going to show some numbers too. I mean, this is a significant issue for his African-American base as well. So just listen, I mean, you have to be insane, delusional, a liar, et cetera, to deny the reality in front of our face at this point, which is Joe Biden may very well survive another 4 years, but on some key levels, he's already gone. I mean,
Yes.
even from when he was elected just a few years ago, the decline is notable. And we know that not just because of these little clips that happen to sneak out, but because they refuse to allow him to even do, you know, the limited interviews he was doing before. So I maintain that, you know, a few years, whether he loses now or he, you know, gains re-election, and we're talking a number of years down the road, once he's out of office, maybe 2 years later, there's going to be some White House insider who writes a tell-all about the decline, about the things they witnessed, about the moments where he couldn't marshal the words, where he didn't know what people were talking about, where he was confused. It's, you know, it's getting to, I don't think we're quite to, but we're getting towards Dianne Feinstein type of levels, where everyone's just pretending who's around him that, no, he's vigorous and you don't see him, you know, off camera, et cetera. Like, we're not stupid. We are not stupid.
Well, you said you'd have to be a liar or propagandist to deny this, and we found our fair share over at MSNBC. Let's take a listen to how they're spinning it.
It needs to be said. I mean, you have Joe Biden here with a schedule that would be brutal for anybody.
Oh, my gosh.
Any president of any age going to Europe, you know, a couple times on D-Day and spending 5 days in France, going over to the G7.
In the middle of the personal struggles.
In the middle of the personal struggles, the Hunter trial. And yesterday, even critics were saying that he did a strong job, very good job representing the United States, even though, again, we have some cheap fakes that the RNC, once again, spreading vicious lies about Joe Biden, but that's who they are.
We should point those out.
That's who they've become. We will point that in a second. But Jonathan Lemire, I was struck by the strong message as well that Joe Biden delivered yesterday. I mean, the United States and our great allies in Europe have really stood shoulder to shoulder here, other than Mike Johnson and Donald Trump holding up badly needed security aid to Ukraine. Now that roadblock has gotten past, and people who actually love freedom and love democracy and hate authoritarians who invade other countries, it seems to me we have them outnumbered.
got them outnumbered. Yeah, certainly, with the most unpopular people in all of Europe. Yeah, we'll get to that and our little France segment about how the Ukraine situation is basically collapsing the entire center-right, the entire center-right coalition in France, one of the great powers on the continent. Put the policy aside. He's like, look at the strong, vigorous job and what a tough schedule. It's like, that is the most basic schedule for a president. Yes, we expect it's a tough schedule. It's supposed to be the toughest job in the world. That's why, ostensibly, you want somebody who is strong in that job that can cope with it. We don't give them points for doing the most basics of traveling from Europe to Los Angeles for a fundraiser. It's also not like he's doing anything special. Oh, it's like, oh, he went and saw and attended a review on D-Day? Yeah, so is every single president who has ever held the office. That's literally part of the job description. So there's so much going on there, but maybe it pales in comparison to our next clip if you want to say anything before.
Yeah, I just want to comment on the policy. I mean, this line about if you believe in freedom and democracy, like, are you kidding me? How can you even mouth those words now, given the support for Israel committing a genocide in Gaza? Like, how can you pretend that human rights and freedom and democracy has anything to do with this foreign policy? How can you even pretend at this point with regard to Ukraine that the policy has been anything other than abject and complete disaster with monstrous results, first and foremost for Ukrainian men and Ukrainian society? Like, that's the part that gets me is it'd be one thing if you could point at the policy and be like, well, he's really freaking old, and I'm not sure if he's going to make it another 4, but at least things are going good. But they're not, especially on foreign affairs. To try to make that argument that he's been a strong, effective leader is just complete and utter lies, propaganda, and insanity that I can't even believe that Joe Scarborough believes. I mean, this person is not an idiot. He's not an idiot. He's not naive. He was in Washington. He knows the real reasons that these people actually make the decisions that they do. And it has nothing to do with, defending democracy or human rights, et cetera. But he also, Joe Scarborough, has a track record of being wrong on basically every major foreign policy issue of our time. So I guess it's par for the course.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's go to the next part here. Even more MSNBC slavish North Korean propaganda. Let's take a listen.
It's amazing because you think about the fact that the president is playing chess and the former president at best is playing like hungry hippo.
Yeah, well, if that, maybe Uno. I'm going to give him Uno,
You're
maybe.
giving him Uno?
He's playing Uno.
Oh, okay.
Uno, and somebody keeps telling him draw 4. I just, it's the split screen this week, much like the split screen last week. You keep talking about the split screens that have happened. And again, much for everyone that's saying, oh, Joe Biden seems a little too old. I don't know about you, but from France, doing all these things, coming back to America, going back out to the G7 in Italy. Now he's on his way to LA right now as we speak to do another event. And I don't know where Donald Trump has been. Yes, I didn't know where he's been. Railing against a machine on a stage.
It's a little bit marginal, but I think it shows that the one thing we've known about Joe Biden since he took office is this is a man who meets his moments. He met his moment at the beginning. He met his moment with the economic crisis in the wake of COVID. He met his moment with Ukraine. He has met his moment over and over and over again. And I think now, look, we're just a few days away now from that first debate. And so what the split screen is going to look like is exactly what we're going to see in Atlanta not too long from now, which is someone railing against the ghosts. Who else is in the room with you, Donald? Do you see the people there? With someone who's going to be like, you really want 4 more years of this?
It's like, I don't know what split screen they're looking at because the only one I'm seeing here is Biden. Now, look, Trump, he certainly says some off-the-wall stuff and he goes on his meandering rabbit holes. That said, I covered him for many, many years. That has been par for the course now for a long time, long before even this race. It's not all that noticeable, honestly, in terms of the difference in his performance. Whereas with Biden, I mean, I don't know how, again, you can deny reality. We also have this we can put up there on the screen. This is from the New York Post. They report that Biden's condition, quote, shocks allies at the G7 summit, with one saying that it is worst he has ever been. This was during discussions at the G7. Diplomatic insiders telling British press, quote, that Biden had been losing focus and that it's the worst that he has ever been. In several separate instances, he had awkward, exchanges with Meloni from Italy. he, quote, apparently got on the wrong foot with her, keeping her waiting for over 20 minutes before arriving for an unknown reason. Then in the meeting itself, like, things kind of went off the rails. At the same time, he had all of these meetings with other leaders, many of them allegedly, or at least their aides, telling all of their local media they're shocked at his condition. This is just more and more that adds to what we already see on the camera. And yet, for them, it's like they are literally living in a different reality.
I mean, I wonder with the MSNBC crew, like, does their own audience even believe this and buy this at this point? I don't actually think.
I don't know.
I don't actually think so. Maybe because their audience is so small. But when you look at those word clouds that we had from JL Partners last week, every demographic, every partisan group, Democrats, Republicans, and certainly independents, most of all independents, the number one word they associated with Joe Biden is old. So I don't even know if the MSNBC crowd is buying that he's playing 9D chess while Trump is playing Hungry, Hungry Hippo. I mean, that's kind of an amusing turn of phrase. I wish it actually applied. You know, if I didn't think Joe Biden was a monster at this point, I might find the whole situation somewhat tragic, because here's a man who chased the White House his entire adult life. Finally, he's able to grab the brass ring, and it comes at a time when he's basically too old to do the job. And I don't know if it was just manipulation, public manipulation, or if he really considered, if he had more self-awareness at the time when he was running back in 2020 and he was suggesting to the public that he would step down, that he would serve only one term. And now that he's in the job, there's both just the allure of the power and not wanting to give that up. But also, I think as he has gotten to a point of age and decline, he doesn't have enough self-awareness to realize how much he's lost at this point. So in any case, whether it was just a sheer lie for public manipulation or whether he really had some thoughts of moving aside, you know, if you actually believe the things that Democrats claim to believe about the existential threats facing the country, this is what Cenk Uygur says, and I think he's 100% correct. This is one of the most selfish, narcissistic moves that you could possibly make. It really is a betrayal of his own voters and the reasons that they put him in place to begin with. And it has set up Democrats for potentially a stunning loss against another incredibly weak candidate who would be easily defeated by virtually any other just like normal, basically coherent Democrat.
Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show, help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.